described the vibe perfectly in a letter he wrote to Steve and me. Part of what he said was, I wanted to thank you both and Steve for making me feel so welcome today. That doesn't make any sense. I wanted to thank both you and Steve. He did not write that poorly. I said it poorly.
All right, we're streaming back again on YouTube. Let me go get
Part
that
of what
on.
he's
I'm going to get it on Podfeet now.
Okay, good. I knew you could do it. I had every faith.
We'll see if it holds up.
Okay, mute yourself. I got it. Hang on. NosillaCast. Yep. Okay. Remember, I can't mute you.
Yep.
Part of what he wrote in his letter was this. I wanted to thank both you and Steve for making me feel so welcome today in the Discord Disco, where all the cool kids come and comment during Apple events. Isn't that a perfect description of what it's like? It's so much fun in there. Make sure next time, if you didn't join us this time, you try to get in there because we have a really good time. All right, let's get into that original content that I promised you. All right.
Okay, we're streaming again. It's called NosillaCast 905A. And it's on YouTube and Podfeet.
Copy link. Copy. Well, that's weird. Oh, wow. Look at what did... Okay, so I apparently don't have something configured quite right. Those chapters don't... That's markers. It's not supposed to be markers. It's supposed to be chapter. View chapters. Chapters are supposed to be up here. Okay. Okay, and it didn't do it correctly, so let me delete that. Try this again. Okay. Here we go. Trying again. Come on. Ah. Okay. Didn't work that time. Let me try it again. This is my newly nuked and paved machine, so it is not behaving quite the way I want it to. All right. One more time. Okay. I heard the thing. Copy link. Copy. Come on.
There
you could
we
do it.
go.
You could do it. Nope.
I look good.
No, they don't.
What's wrong?
That is not supposed to be the URL, and the URL.
Oh, I see.
I think this one, I don't know why that's not working, but this one is supposed to be that, and that one's supposed to say that. Don't know what would make it do that. Okay, well, I'm going to keep recording. Muting Steve. This week, I had a blast as a guest on Clockwise with Dan Moore and Micah Sargent and fellow guest Joe Rosensteel. We answered pressing questions such as, are you ultra enough for Apple Watch Ultra? Is Apple Watch marketing out of control? Who is this really for? We also answered the question, do you ever do a full nuke and pave of your Mac? How often? What event makes you go for it? Do you have a process? And will you be upgrading to an iPhone 14 this year? If so, which one? And finally, Apple adapted their events from onstage presentations with some video segments to a very polished long-form video presentation that Tim Cook described as a film. Is there anything about the format that you wish Apple would change? And the bonus question was great fun. It was, what color was your childhood bedroom? And I had a really funny answer to that. Anyway, out of all those questions, can you guess which one of these was mine? You can find Clockwise in your podcatcher of choice, or of course, there's a link in the show notes to episode number 467, Off-Road for 2 Seconds of the Clockwise podcast. All right, we get to hear from Bruce. Okay. Let me see if I do...
Bruce.
Is it just going to work this time? Nope. That's so weird. Why would it do that? Why would it act like it's doing it? That will be hard to figure out. All right. I do like Dynamic Island. Okay.
It's a hop in place.
All right. It's time for Bruce. He introduced himself, so I'm going to jump right in. 2 seconds of the Clockwise podcast. Ooh, and there's a click at the beginning. Didn't catch that. Split. Delete. Okay. 2 seconds of the Clockwise podcast.
Hi, this is Bruce from East Tennessee with a tip about the visual lookup that exists in the macOS Photos app. Well, I didn't know about it at the time that I started this adventure. Allison actually spoke about this same capability back in October of 2021 in her blog post titled iOS 15, These Are a Few of My Favorite Things. Apparently, I don't listen as carefully to everything Allison says as I think I do. But she was talking about the Photos app on iOS, so I may have kind of tuned out. Or there's just too much to remember. After all, how many times has Allison found out that the answer to a current question is a blog post she wrote a while back? But I digress. The problem to be solved, trademark Podfeet, in this case is that my wife and I saw an interesting plant in a botanical garden while we were on vacation. That plant wasn't labeled, and we were really interested in what that plant was, as my wife wanted to know if it would work in our garden. And we were at the Kew Royal Botanic Garden on the west side of London, England, so not being able to find a label around all of the instances of that plant was a bit unusual, and it's a very open question whether something growing near London will or should grow in East Tennessee. After all, as a friend pointed out, I do live at the same latitude as North Africa. And just because a thing can grow someplace doesn't mean it should be planted there. Kudzu, as just one horrible example, grows quite well in this climate. So, as we were reviewing pictures on my Mac, we came to the ones I'd taken of this particular plant. I had the info pane open, and this particular picture had this little bitty icon in the middle of it, sort of like a leaf, if your eyesight's good. And my wife asked about what that icon was, and my response was I didn't know, and it was sometimes there and sometimes not. I noticed it while I was reviewing photos on the plane coming home, but it just gave me a no info found response when I clicked on it, which turned out to be a bit of a duh, as I wasn't connected to the internet on our flight home from Europe. But we were connected to the internet at home, and so we tried clicking it again. This time I got a window telling me that Photos thinks that this plant is from the genus Echium. And with that information and a bit more searching, I'm now about 98% confident that this plant is Echium pyramana, aka the Tower of Jewels. It's definitely not native to East Tennessee, coming originally from the Canary Islands, but I know enough to be able to do the research for whether this non-native plant is something I can consider, as well as to look for other plants in this particular genus. So, digging back into this visual lookup a bit more on macOS, what I discovered is that the visual lookup icon only shows up when the info pane is showing, and only if Photos thinks there's something there that it can tell you. If you go to the blog post for this particular tip, you can see that photo from Kew Gardens, but without the info pane showing. No icon. If I turn on the info pane, now I can see the visual lookup icon showing up for this particular picture right there in the middle of the photo. And clicking that icon shows me what Apple Photos thinks is relevant for this photo, which is that the plant is from the genus Echium, as I discussed a few minutes ago. Doing a bit of digging into this and experimenting, I find that this feature came in with iOS 15, as discussed in Allison's article, and with macOS Monterey, as discussed in the Apple support article that's linked in this blog post. In my experimentation, I find that the plant and animal identification is useful, but maybe sometimes a bit off. It has been enough, however, to get me to the right answer. So I would consider the results a useful starting point, but not anything authoritative. I've also experimented with this for some other images, and those results have been sometimes less satisfactory. If, for example, I had a photo of a well-known painting, I suspect that the results would be more relevant. But as one example, the visual lookup icon shows up for a photo I took of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II edition of Monopoly, which I took on tour of the HMS Britannia in Edinburgh while I was there. But photo simply comes back with no info found when I click on that visual icon. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing when considered from a privacy perspective. My interpretation is that Apple Photos is running an algorithm locally to predict whether or not it can find additional information for this particular image. But it doesn't actually send anything out to the internet until I ask for that additional information. Now, not getting any additional information is a bit of a disappointment. But given the choice between the algorithm being wrong sometimes and photos sending a bunch of things out to the internet without my asking, I'll take the current Apple Photos choice. Unfortunately, sometimes whatever Photos is using for a search comes up with some interesting answers. One of the things that I often do when I'm visiting places is to take pictures of the informational plaques so I can read them carefully later and look up more information. Photos thinks it might be able to find more information about an informational poster I took a picture of when we were in Linlithgow, Scotland. But it turns up information about a completely unrelated book for sale. So, not so useful in this particular case. So, your mileage may vary in terms of whether this is useful to you. The key thing to know from a macOS standpoint is that you'll only see the indicators for when Photos thinks it might have additional useful information on a photo if you have the info pane showing. I hope you find this tip useful and stay subscribed or whatever it is that we're doing today.
Yay, Bruce.
Nice
That was
review, Bruce.
fantastic.
I think I found a typo in one of the
Yeah,
sentences.
I'm going to ask the same thing.
Okay.
So, Bruce, I wondered about this. You said Lithgow underneath the, your notes said Linlithgow, Scotland. Linlithgow. Is that a typo or is that the real name? He's typing. Okay, Linlithgow. Okay, so it was just we heard you quickly. Is that what you were going to suggest, Steve?
No, it's something else
What
that
were you
is, I think, a typo. So in the sentence right before the first Monopoly figure, it starts with lowercase s and then one example. I'm not sure
Yeah,
what
I screwed
precedes
that up. It should be the letter A, capital A.
Capital A. Okay. You want me to just fix that?
I would love it if you would just fix that.
All right.
Great, thank you. Okay, I need this over here, and I need this over here. Great, thank you.
But A would say A1 example. That doesn't read right.
Okay, just a second. This is a typo I have induced in his. No, just add an A. It would be as AS.
Oh, I'm sorry. As one example. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I am going to record here. I've got a lot to do here, so recording now. Thank you for catching that, Steve. I thought I fixed that.
A photo if you have the info pane showing. I hope you find this tip useful and stay subscribed or whatever it is that we're doing today.
Yes, we're still staying subscribed, Bruce. Well, I love this tip for so many reasons. First of all, Bruce pointing out that even I don't know what I've talked about, so how on earth could all of you guys be able to... No, dang it. I purposely didn't do it that way. Stop.
A photo if you have the info pane showing. I hope you find this tip useful and stay subscribed or whatever it is that we're doing today.
Well, yes, we're still staying subscribed, Bruce. Well, anyway, I love this tip for so many reasons. First of all, Bruce pointing out that even I don't know what we've talked about, so how on earth should all y'all be able to be expected to remember if I can't remember? Secondly, I never realized it was in Photos for macOS, probably because I didn't think to look for the change when the info panel is open. I've also had experiences like Bruce's where it does really well on some things and is a complete miss on others. It can recognize things like in images like the Taj Mahal, but maybe not your local library building. I do also want to point out that Bruce sent in this tip ages ago, and so there was no disrespect meant about now that the Queen has passed. He talked about the Monopoly game with the Queen on it, and that was before she passed. So I delayed a long time in playing this, so this is all on me. Thanks again, Bruce. Keep these fabulous tips coming. All right. Oh.
What?
I think I saw something happening.
You saw something happening, correct?
Yeah.
Lee?
Yeah, no, it might be a hint.
Oh.
I'm gonna watch something here. Might be a hint on what's going. One hint. Yeah, you know what it's doing. It's bringing to the foreground the editor version, not the preview version
Of
Mars Edit.
mm.
No, that's not it. It didn't do it that time. Never mind. Okay. Shoot. All right. Now I'm going to have to talk for a long time. All right, here we go.
Nuclear weapons may be involved.
Yes.
Let's
Sorry,
hope there's not
everybody.
too much fallout.
All right, I did save, Kevin. Thank you. Got a chapter mark. I should be ready to go. Okay, muting Steve. We had rain this week, Kevin. 0.17 inches. All right, here we go. Last week, I announced that I was going to do yet another Nuke and Pave because I was exhausted from all the weird problems I inherited from Migration Assistant. I'm happy to tell you that I started the process on Monday, and by Tuesday evening, I was about 90% complete. Even though it went swimmingly, I have many thoughts about the process. Before doing a Nuke and Pave, one backup is mandatory, and having two backups is just common sense, because after the pave, you would have no backup at all otherwise, because one thing is not a backup, right? So I use Carbon Copy Cloner to back up my full system and data to an SSD, and I have an offsite backup with Backblaze. But if I'm going to blow away my internal drive, I need to have a replicant of that backup drive. Invariably, I will have forgotten something that I can only get to by booting to the external SSD, and just that act of booting from it can change its content. Think of it like forensic evidence. Before you start touching it, you need to work off of a copy. My strategy for the last few years is to make a sparse bundled disk image on my Synology and then back the SSD up to that sparse bundle. Every year it's an adventure trying to remember how exactly to do that. It requires some incantations in disk utility on the Mac, and then moving the sparse bundle from the Mac to the Synology, and then putting the data inside the sparse bundle on the Synology. Now, like I said, I have trouble remembering this process, so I pinged Stephen Getz and asked him, how do I do this? How have I done it in the past? He's really good for that kind of question. I then remembered that I had documented my process in Keep It from Reinvented Software. The process I documented after creation of the disk image was to just hand the copy over the files from my backup SSD to the disk image on the Synology. Just drag them over. I ran this idea by Stephen and he said, and I'm quoting here, "That's how I was going to suggest you do it." So I tried to just copy over the pieces I really needed to preserve first, like hidden files and my user library where all those weird settings live. Then I got more aggressive in moving other files, and since I was succeeding with those, I got bold and I tried to copy over my photos library. Things went downhill quickly and I never got a full backup completed. I started this process at 9:32 a.m. on Monday, and at 4:16 p.m. I gave up on having a complete duplicate of my SSD. I spent 7 hours on and off fighting with this method. I told Stephen I was finally giving up because I just needed to do the nuke, and again, I'm going to quote him here. Do you know what he said to me? "You are finding out why I never use Finder to back up my Mac. I would have just aimed Carbon Copy Cloner at the sparse bundle." He's the one who said I was doing it right the first time. Well, I told him I thought he was a terrible person and that he didn't love him anymore. While I'm still annoyed at him for not saying this at the beginning of the day, I'll come back around to the topic at the end of this article. So I have to say that the paving part was actually delightful. My mind map wasn't very stale since I'd done this just 10 months ago. I've also been honing this mind map for ages now, and it gets more complete and easier to follow every time I go through it. App developers have also come a long way towards improving how to move the settings you create in apps. To review my mind map, again made with iThoughts, I have on the right side of the mind map are all of the apps I need to install, and I categorize them as mission critical, high priority, and low priority. On the left-hand side, I list all of the tasks I need to perform using those same three categories. Most of them are associated with apps, most of these tasks, but there's also operating system tweaks and things like moving hidden files like SSH keys and gitignore files. At this point in the story, I need to step back and address the fact that Bart is positively apoplectic listening to this me talk about having to move my SSH keys. What he is yelling into his iPhone right now is, I taught you how to use Shamewa to manage those dot files like SSH keys and gitignore files. He is absolutely correct. We had many lessons in programming by stealth on this very subject, and it would have made my life easier and more predictable if I had applied what I had learned in those lessons. But because I don't often switch computers, the overhead of setting it up and remembering how I set it up and remembering how to use it when I needed it was greater than the effort of simply showing hidden files with Command-Shift-Dot and then command dragging all of the dot files over to a folder I have in Dropbox. I went into this with my eyes open, and I'm sure for those of you who use many computers or move computers often, Shamewa is a much better choice than the way I did it. Okay, with that intermission, back to my story. As I mentioned, as a recent improvement to my process, I created a Dropbox folder I call Nuke and Pave. This is where I put copies of any setting files that I'm going to need on the other side of the Nuke and Pave. So for example, in Audio Hijack, I need to export all of my sessions and then import them into the clean system. So I made a subfolder in my Nuke and Pave folder on Dropbox, and I called it Audio Hijack, and I dropped my files in there. By putting them in Dropbox, I know as soon as I install Dropbox on the newly paved machine, I'll have access to them in the Finder. I also made a folder for my hidden files. Back on the left-hand side, where I document all of the tasks associated with the different applications, I document that I have to remember things, like exporting Audio Hijack sessions before I nuke. Well, I do my best to review the left side before nuking, and I color code these preparatory steps. I make them bright red to make sure I remember to do them. I always end up missing a few. This often means booting from my backup drive and then rebooting back into the paved system. This is time-consuming and annoying, and it's slightly dangerous because, as I mentioned, you don't want to touch that last pristine backup until you absolutely have to. So this year, I decided I needed to improve the preparation process. I didn't want to mess with the instructions for each app over on the task side of the mind map, but I thought it would be an improvement if I had one consolidated area for preparation before nuking. iThoughts to the rescue because it has the concept of linking between nodes. So this year, I thought of a great enhancement. I made this link by creating a top-level node on the right side called Prep Work. Inside that node, I put just the names of the apps that required prep work. I then created a link from the detailed steps on the right to the app node under Prep Work. That means it's the detailed steps on the left. Detailed steps on the left. What's up, Steve? Oh, well, that'll help wet my whistle. Interruption for a gin and tonic. How's that? I would read your reactions, but I have a cat completely blocking Discord for me now. Thank you, dear.
My pleasure.
Let's see. Okay, I made a couple of typos there, so I'm going to send that to the blog. Okay. Okay, where was I? Let's see, I got to listen to this here. Creating a top-level node on the right side called Prep Work. Inside this year, this year, I created a top-level node on the right side of my diagram called Prep Work. Inside that node, I put simply the names of the apps that required that prep work. Then I created a link from the detailed steps that are over on the left-hand side to the My voice died. Okay, we'll try that again. This year, I created a top-level node on the right-hand side called Prep Work. Inside that node, I simply put the names of the apps that required prep work. No detail at all, just the names. I then created a link from the detailed steps over on the left to the app node under Prep Work. If you look at my mind map, I put a link in the show notes, you see that there's just a big arrow on all of those nodes that just have the names of apps. If I click that arrow, it jumps me over to the preparation that I need to do. So now the prep work node is very simple and easy to follow, while the actual prep work is still quite messy and has lots of operations required. All right, before the nuking, I had documents and desktop synced to iCloud Drive, and I was storing originals locally since I have plenty of space. But when the paving happened, iCloud Drive was turned on, and I made sure documents and desktop were checked, and my photos were unchecked. I wanted to separate the slog that is downloading my photos from everything else. What I didn't notice, and surprised me, was that documents and desktop were set to optimize storage, not full size as I had expected. There's another typo. They're not size images. It's not images. I'm so used to saying full-sized images. Okay.
Do you want me to fix it?
No, because I'm making a couple of fixes on my way. Thanks, though.
All right.
And surprised me. And surprised me. I don't know what I was going to say. I wanted to separate. I wanted to separate the slog that is downloading my photos from everything else. What I didn't notice and surprised me was that documents and desktops were set to optimize storage, not full size or full res or whatever they call it as expected. It's not full res, that's only images, but you know what I mean. The way I figured out this problem was happening was kind of interesting. As I was working away installing and configuring apps, after a while I noticed that I was getting slow behavior from the operating system. For example, Command Tab to open an app or to switch to an app would take like 2 seconds to actually switch. If I double-clicked a file in the Finder, it would take a couple of seconds to react. I knew I hadn't yet crufted up my system to be causing this, so I opened up Activity Monitor to see what was slowing things down. I found a process at the top of the list called File Provider D that was chewing up more than one full CPU. I looked it up on the internets and discovered that it's the daemon that manages optimized storage for iCloud Drive. Once I found the checkbox, I turned off Optimize Max Storage, my files began to flow in as originals, and File Provider D stopped slowing my system down. Now, it was not obvious to me where to find the setting to control whether iCloud Drive used optimized files. In iCloud System Preferences, under your Apple ID, you see the pretty little graphic list in the upper right with checkboxes for each of the services you want to sync through iCloud. Inside iCloud Drive, the checkbox for desktop and documents was selected, but there was no option for optimization. I went back to the main page and I found a little checkbox underneath the graphic list that said Optimize Max Storage, and that was inexplicably checked. It does make some sense in this location now that I look at it, but since Photos Optimized Storage is in a completely different place, I didn't think to look there at first because that seems like something that would apply to everything in that list. I'm kind of surprised that it did this, as I've never seen it checked before after a nuke. Yet another thing to add to my mind map. I would like to issue an official apology to Migration Assistant for one thing that I accused it of and it was unjustly accused of. I mentioned that I was getting these really annoying Dropbox notifications every time the WordPress plugin Updraft from my website tried to delete an old backup in Dropbox. I said I had no idea how to fix it because I don't know why Dropbox was complaining and it would let it delete it before. Well, after the nuke and pave, the exact same behavior happened. So as I started thinking about it, it didn't really make sense that Updraft was able to delete things on my drive because that's software running on my web server. I was reinstalling my Hazel scripts when I found the one that I had created telling Hazel to delete old backups from Dropbox. That makes a lot more sense. Not only that, the easy solution to the pesky Dropbox notification was to simply click a very obvious checkbox that said, Don't ask me this again. I apologize to Migration Assistant for this misrepresentation of guilt, but only on this one item. Okay, maybe I have to apologize for a second thing I blamed on Migration Assistant. Remember, one problem was that Steve could not see inside my desktop and documents folder when he was connecting to my machine over the network? The same behavior was there after the nuke and pave. Turns out the problem was actually that pesky optimized Mac storage option. As soon as I unchecked that box, Steve was again able to see inside the folders. So I guess I have to apologize to Migration Assistant a second time. Well, as I installed my apps from scratch, I started realizing how some apps are better than others in making our lives easier on installation and configuration. I came up with several different ways to describe my favorites. I've got a bunch of different lists. Now, I'm not going to call out any of the more annoying apps by name, but just kind of describe why I think they're annoying. The first criteria for favorites is, how does the apps installer work? Well, the clear winner is Mac App Store apps. It's easy. It's all in one place. You just click and move on to the next one. I love Mac App Store apps. The next best apps are those whose download is the application itself. Like, you don't need to install it. Just downloads the application. You drag it into your applications folder and you're done. Next are apps whose download is a DMG disk image. Usually with these, you double-click to mount the disk image, and inside you get a big arrow demonstrating how to just drag the application onto an application's icon that they've created for you. It's one extra step from the previous really cool apps, but it's still really easy. Next up are apps that use a package installer, a PKG file. I dislike these because after you double-click to launch the installer, they make you agree to a whole bunch of steps that are identical in every single app you ever install with the PKG, so it's a complete and utter waste of time. They include the terms and conditions in there, but, there's not many of us who read them, so again, it's kind of a useless step for most, and I find it kind of annoying. But there's apps that are worse. There's apps that make us reboot after installation, and I just find that annoying. Now, some apps trigger a warning on the General tab of Security and Privacy. Now, I'm not talking about the apps that are asking for, example, accessibility controls. I'm talking about the General tab. And I can't remember what these are called. You have to see one to know what I'm talking about. But it's not a really big deal. You go over to the General tab of Security and Privacy, you unlock with your finger or authenticate, and then you check the box to allow that installation. But I don't actually understand what's different about these apps to make them require this. The other problem is, it's really often that I find these apps will tell me to go look there, but it simply doesn't show up there. And I know what it's supposed to look like. So if it's not there, there's no way to agree. And I find it really aggravating. And I often have to download again and try to install again, try to get it to trigger it over in system preferences, but it doesn't work. Those really bug me. Lastly are apps that make me lower my security level by rebooting into recovery, selecting reduce security, and checking the box to allow user management of kernel extensions from identified developers. Now, one of my favorite and most useful apps I use on my Mac requires this change to security. I know why the app requires this step, and it's the way Apple does things, and it's not even a kernel extension, but it's still a pain, and I don't like having lowered security levels. The second app that requires this has not been updated to Apple's new way of doing things, and the company is just too lazy or understaffed or complacent to fix it. They did file Chapter 11 recently, bankruptcy, so maybe that has something to do with it. Now, I didn't complete this list. I'm going to add one more than what's in the show notes, and that's apps that after I install them, I can't get them to work. I am really annoyed with one of my apps. I can't get it to work. It controls a smart home device, and I can't control my smart home device, and it's really, really bugging me. So a completely different way of judging how much I like apps is how they deal with their licensing. Let's do another list. What are my favorite ones with the way they deal with licensing? Mac App Store apps. Again, it's a clear winner. There's literally no license key. You don't have to store anything. You don't have to retrieve anything from your password manager. Now, some apps with in-app purchases do force you to push a Restore Purchases button, which is a little bit annoying. It's fine and easy when it works, but I've got an app that does absolutely nothing when I push that button. I think I have an in-app purchase, but to be honest, I don't know how to track down whether I bought it or not, but I'm pretty sure I did. I would think the app would either say, "Purchases restored," or "You didn't pay me anything, you deadbeat." Some kind of feedback, that would be swell, but this one just sits there and lets me push this placebo button. So next up after Mac App Store apps are apps that have a simple license key you copy from your password manager and you paste it in. The good ones have an obvious button to give it your license key, and the best ones give you, say, confetti or say thank you in audio. Next, there's apps that let you copy and paste your license key from your password manager, but in this, passive-aggressive move, they hide where you're supposed to paste it. They often give you a buy button that's super obvious, but they obscure the enter license option. I don't know why they do that. It's like, why don't you put it right in front of us so I can prove to you that I already bought it? Next are mini apps that require approval of certain privileges in security and privacy. Now, I don't blame them, because if a screenshot app is going to capture your screen, it makes sense that you should be the one to give them permission to do so. If a video conferencing app wants to be able to turn on your camera, it should politely ask first. I do approve of this. But some apps make this approval easier than others. Their very best have cute little animations to show you how to give these permissions. One of them actually shows you a fish, and you get to drag the fish onto a graphic, and that enables the privileges. I have no idea why it's a fish, and I have no idea how they did this fun little animation, but you know what? It's fun, and I don't get angry when I have to do it. The next best of these simply puts the language in the text. They'll say, open system preferences, security and privacy, privacy tab, screen recording, and check the box. But one of my apps just said, enable privileges in security and privacy. Like, they didn't tell me which privileges. They just goes, yeah, just go find it yourself. I'm just not going to tell you. There were zero clues about the privileges it requires. And now I have enough experience, especially with this app, to know what it needed, but it could have made finding the right accessibility preferences a lot easier for me. Finally, some apps make you uninstall or unlicense first on the computer before you nuke. That one has caught me out many times, requiring more process steps under the prep work in my mind map. Now, I use a lot of apps that need to be tailored to my needs. I mentioned earlier that Audio Hijack has sessions you create for different audio routing scenarios. For example, I have one for recording chit-chat that lets me record me and the other person on separate tracks. And I have a completely different session for the live show when I'm only routing audio and not using Audio Hijack to do the recording. In Hazel, I have a lot of different scripts that run depending on which folder she's watching and what I want to do with the files she's found. In Transmit, my preferred FTP client, I have settings for each of the different servers I need to access. In Under My Roof, I have all of the data for my home, including receipts and photos of my belongings for insurance purposes. These are just a few examples of the things you have to make sure you preserve from the nuke over to the PAVE. So I made another ordered list of how much I like the different approaches apps have for helping you preserve settings and data like this. Number 1, apps that sync settings through the cloud. Doesn't have to be iCloud. I like iCloud, but it could be Dropbox or some other cloud services. But if you're always just syncing that data for me, I don't have to remember to go get it for myself. I launch the app, I tell it to start syncing, and everything I need comes in. The second best are apps that have an export an export and import tool for those settings. Next are the apps where the developers send you the double secret hidden library file that may or may not work if you copy it across from the nuke to the PAVE. But you know what? These developers, great. They send me these instructions. They go, I wish you the best of luck. It might work. Finally, the ones I really dislike are the apps that make you take screenshots of every single page of settings to reproduce those settings on the other side. I have a lot of those. But I'm happy to say that most of the apps now have very reliable methods of syncing data, so I don't do nearly as much faffing about as I used to, but there is still enough that it makes it really important to do that prep work. Now I want to add one more honorable mention category to this list, and I have to call out the app by name in order to explain it. Folga is the app I use for creating tutorial guides with screenshots with annotations. When viewing the list of guides you've created, the developer, Alexi, very clearly included a backup and restore button right next to the green Create Guide button. When I reviewed Folga for the NosillaCast, I even told you all about it, so I knew that button was there. You absolutely can't miss it. But Bruce just told you, Allison doesn't have a very good memory, so I forgot to do it before I nuked. See why I need to add the prep work node to my mind map? Well, I was really hoping to avoid booting into my backup to push that button to export, even though I knew it was there. So I wrote to Alexi and I asked him whether the guides I'd created were maybe buried in my user library folder somewhere where I could just drag them over from the backup instead of booting into it. He got back to me really quickly like he always does, and he told me that indeed I could just drag the files from the old library to the new one, and it worked perfectly. The reason he gets extra points is because of what he wrote after the instructions. He said, "May I ask you one thing? How would you ideally expect Folga to behave in such a backup story like yours?" Isn't that lovely? He's in constant search for how to improve his tool. Now, this was clearly my fault. His tool had the button and I just forgot to push it, but he asks those questions. What else can I do to make it better? Now, the last method of judging apps has only one entry in it, and it's how fast does the download happen. Out of the 84 apps I downloaded, 83 of them either downloaded before I even had a chance to check on them, or they were hugely capable apps that made sense that they'd take a minute to download. But the 84th app downloaded inexplicably slow. And when I checked Activity Monitor to see my network speeds, it was downloading at 750 kilobytes per second. I said I wasn't going to call out apps for bad behavior, but this one's so mainstream, I feel it will be interesting. That 750 kilobyte per second download was Firefox. I have no idea why it was slow that day. Now, I'm sure most of you've just been wading through all of this to find out, but Allison, what happened with your Photos download? I decided to wait until I had my system up and working well with most apps installed and configured before unleashing my Photos onto the system. I toyed with the idea of using Migration Assistant to move just my Photos library, because Pat Dengler said she was pretty sure I could do that, but I flinched. I just couldn't use Migration Assistant after what it had done to me. I turned on iCloud Photo Library, I set it to download originals, and I just let it go to town. Now, with this method, having moved no copies, I don't copy those over, I don't bring them from a backup, I just download originals. Apple gives you the optimized images first, so you get access to your images much more quickly. If the thumbnail is there, you can always open it, and Photos will go download that one image ahead of all the others. As I've mentioned before, the full download took more than 3 days the last time I went through this process, and I've taken a lot of photos in the last 10 months. I have grandchildren, why not? I got to tell you, I was shocked. It was less than 2 days after I started the download this time. It was completely finished. And I have no idea how soon it actually finished, because I never thought to go look, because I thought 90,760 photos and 2,500 videos would come down that quickly. So I wasn't watching it, but it did. They came down very quickly. And if you've got a huge Photos library, I would definitely recommend. Don't move any of your files, just start to download originals and they'll come down quickly. Now, I still wasn't happy with the half-baked backup I ended up with on my Synology, and I promised I would come back and revisit that at the end. I decided to try Stephen Getz's second recommendation to have Carbon Copy Cloner simply make a backup from the SSD over to the sparse bundle on the Synology. This was not a quick process, but it was predictable and it was successful, which is highly different from the way I did it before. Carbon Copy Cloner backed up 2,620,623 files for a total of 1.4 terabytes of data from my SSD to my Synology over gigabit Ethernet in 32 hours, 39 minutes, and 51 seconds. This time, I added a new entry to my mind map suggesting that 2 days before I want to do my nuke and pave, I should start backing up my backup drive to the NAS, and I put that under prep work. The bottom line is that the time and energy I put into doing the nuke and pave this time was about 1/8 of the time and energy I put in trying to diagnose the stupid spotlight problems alone, and I was never even successful in fixing it. And that doesn't even count how much time I wasted chasing down all of the other janky behavior. I don't think I will ever try Migration Assistant again. Now here's one last fun data point to close this out. I had 168 apps installed before the nuke and pave, not counting the 30 pre-installed apps or any of the other Apple utilities. After the nuke and pave, that count dropped to 84. I think that's remarkable. 50% of the apps I had installed in just 10 months didn't even make my low priority list. Now, I know I load a lot of stuff on my Mac, but even if you're a more normal person, I suspect you could cut your app count by a lot if you did a nuke and pave now and then. By the way, I've downloaded another app since I wrote that part of the story.
Of course you have. So
it was Bart's fault.
Yeah. I think you've implied it, and maybe you said it explicitly, but I missed it. Your Spotlight problems are resolved?
Oh, let me go back in and say it.
But is that true?
No, yes, they are, but I didn't say it.
Okay.
Let me add this. Okay, one last point. Steve, during the live show, just asked me, he said, but Allison, were your spotlight problems fixed? Yes, they are. Everything is working perfectly on my new machine.
Well,
I don't
good.
think I've installed, put my old,
Knock on wood. Thanks, Bruce.
yeah,
He's leaving the hope
have
open
seen-
that it just falls apart.
he doesn't want it to work.
I know, I'm joking. He's just
Bruce-
leaving the option open that it might not.
Bruce better not be on Kevin's team.
He's not. Well, maybe he is.
I can't get to the settings, but I've got to find this. Come on. I'm trying to move enough cat out of the way to get to the settings.
You got
Where
a lot
are
of cat?
notifications of, I got a lot of cat. Notifications every time somebody comes in or leaves.
Discord?
I'm hearing doodle doodle.
That's
Yeah,
Discord.
I thought I'd shut them off.
Those are hard for sometimes, I've noticed.
If you're looking for pre-channel or per server notifications. really click the
notifications. Enable desktop notifications is the top one, and mine's off.
Yeah, but it's not a notification. It's a bloop, 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 bloop. Every time somebody comes in and out, I'm hearing it.
Well, there are sounds below that.
So I disable all sound notifications.
Yeah, did you
There you
disable that one? All right.
Yeah, but I thought I had, let me put it back. I thought I had, hang on. I thought I had turned off the one for people coming in. Oh yeah, I should just turn them all
Just
off.
turn them off. All off. That's what
Yeah.
I do. It gets too busy.
Yeah.
Come over to the
Alrighty. Now-
wingman team, Bruce.
What's that?
He's being
No,
recruited.
Bruce. No, Bruce. No, Bruce, come on. You know what? We should have 3 teams. There
Alright.
should be the Sandy Wing Woman team, Kevin Wing Man team, and I think we should have a Switzerland team where you
Oh, the
don't
neutral
take
team.
sides.
Yes.
The neutral or the neutral zone.
The
Is that
neutral
better?
yeah, the neutral zone. Perfect. And there
right.
are no weapons involved or no shooting involved in the neutral zone. It could start a
Okay,
war.
I need everybody to declare their allegiance now to which zone are you in.
No, don't ask people to do that.
Let's see. That's
Romulan or Klingon.
yeah, that's an important point. All right. Oh, let's listen to Bart.
Good answer, Bruce.
Steve, you talked right over
Oh,
Bart.
sorry. Hold on.
Oh, geez, you did it again. Shh.
Blink.
There you go.
Ooh, that was a very crisp one.
It was
Very crisp.
like the Oxford comma. Can I be a double agent? Okay, Mike, I think you just won teams. Oh, that's funny. All right, let's see. Split that. Do this. Let's see if I pull these over. This is how you can tell. I finally figured out why people like curved monitors. For me to see whether the audio track is lined up right with the music, this is what I have to do.
Because of your narrow field of vision in your glasses? Because of...
Well, no, it's just, well, no, I need to be right in front of it. I'm trying to see whether a straight line down is in the right place. So if it's way over there, it's at an angle. I can't really see it right. I need to come over here. Being perfectly on my new machine. Oh, there's no chapter mark.
That was close.
What are you thinking? Let's see, I think I
Let
need
me
to
check.
send that
Kevin
one.
probably did. Yeah, he gave us a reminder. We just missed
He
it.
probably did. You know how awesome he is. Oh, no, it's worse than that.
What?
Uh-oh, what'd I just do? I hit all my apps. Where'd they go? I don't know my own keystrokes. Margetta. I did not do pledge break.
You don't even know your own visuals.
What? Okay, Jill has to answer this one. I just used Option Command Tap to select my all the tracks farther out, and it's hiding all of my apps. That's not normal behavior, is it, Jill? The Hindenburg, the Hindenburg keystroke. You hold down Option Command, and then you tap on your tracks, and it'll. I can't see. Not that I know of. Yeah. I need to make a note of that one. That's a fun behavior. Am I doing the right keystroke, Jill? Option, Command, Select, right? You never did that. Oh. Tap. Hides. Others. That is really a strange behavior, Hindenburg. Okay. I'll work on that one later, but I need to do pledge break. I'm going to do the keystroke because at least it does some of the work, even though it does it wrong. It did it perfectly, Mike. That makes no sense.
Well, something changed. Was a different window highlighted, brought into focus?
I don't know. All right. Let's see, that's 3606. Yeah, I got plenty of time. Okay, I got to do pledge break first. Here we go. Have you heard an episode of Chit Chat Across the Pond or the NosillaCast in the past few months that inspired you in some way? Nope.
Inspired it?
Yeah, it's a gin talking. Have you heard an episode of Chit Chat Across the Pond or the NosillaCast in the past few months that inspired you in some way, or maybe made you laugh, or actually made you more productive? You can show that appreciation by sending a donation through PayPal. Christoph Trusch did that just recently with his quarterly donation that he always makes. Longtime NosillaCast castaway Janet Chesney also sent in a generous donation and included a note that warmed my heart. She wrote, "Thank you for the NosillaCast podcast. Still my fave." I told her that her kind words mean even more than the money, but that I'll graciously accept the money. If you'd like to be swell like Christoph and Janet, just go over to podfeed.com/PayPal and choose the amount of currency you would like to donate. Thank you so much, Christoph and Janet. There we go.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I'm going to delete everything. Okay, that time it didn't hide everything. What is going on?
It's that nuke and pave.
Yeah. Thank goodness I nuked and paved, not have any weird behavior here. All right, let's hear the connection here. I should nuke and pave. Thanks, Jill. Christoph and Janet. No chapter mark. All right, let's take an adventure here. Let's see whether I can do this. Copy link. Copy. What are you going to do this time?
Yes.
And it didn't work.
Oh, it's just repeating the link. I see. That's weird.
Inexplicable. I smell a play date with Mike. He's got nothing to do but help me, right? The mind map is all up to date. Yeah, right. It should be pretty quick. I bet I could do it in like 4 hours now if I did it right now. Okay, one more time. Much, Christoph and Janet. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Bouchatz, but I think this is actually an off weekend, but we're trying to get back on cycle. After all that, I didn't listen to the ending, the intro.
So,
well, it's that time. Perfect. Yes. What can I do for you?
So the clipboard is affected by some apps you might have, right? I mean, you're running, for instance.
Yeah.
And could there be interference of the multiple apps that affect the clipboard with this?
Yes.
How many apps do you have that affect? Okay.
I have at least 3 apps that have clipboard managers in them.
Yeah, there may be a little interference.
They were there before.
Okay.
Patched, so you stay secure.
I don't know. No idea. All right. Oh, I've got 1 minute to finish the show. Here we go. Well, that's going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me anytime you like at allison@podfeed.com. If you have questions or suggestions, how about a dumb question? We haven't had a dumb question in a long time. I got a jingle for it and everything. Need some dumb questions. Those are questions that you think everybody else knows the answer to, but you just don't know. I love those. Don't make them too hard, though. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at Podfeet. If you want to join in the fun of the conversation, you can join our Slack community. Bruce used the data, the guy that did the great review this week. He's in there all the time. You can go there at podfeet.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all of the other lovely Nosilla castaways. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation at podfeet.com/PayPal, like Christoph and Janet. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic Nosilla castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed. See, Bruce? We're still staying subscribed.
So Jill asked a good question.
Wait, that was to see if anybody listens to the end. And you didn't even listen to the end. How do I what?
Jill asked, what is the best way to migrate your phone when you have too many photos in your iPhone? But that kind of gets...
The answer is iCloud Photo Library.
Right.
You don't transfer them.
So it depends on what is where do you keep your full photos, the full version, full res photos. And if you keep them in the iCloud library, then that answers it, right? But if you keep them in your iPhone, that's dangerous, right? If you don't use iCloud library.
So, Jill, do you use iCloud Photo Library? Because if you do, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, if it's
Bruce?
If it's only on your phone, that's risky because you lose your phone, you lose the high res photos.
Yeah, not having to do a backup at all is the right way.
Right.
I do, but it's your friend. So does your friend have iCloud Photo Library? Tell her to shell out $3. Oh, if she does have it,
then there's no problem. They're backed up. They're there.
Why do you think there's too many is a question. Can you do a chapter mark while she answers, Steve?
Can I do a chapter mark?
5 lights.
I can't do chapter marks.
You can count them and tell me if I'm right.
Chapter mark count. 5, yes.
All right, good. I am judgmental. Oh, because you're saying that it's too many? I mean, I've got 90,000 photos, and they're all on my iPhone.
But not the high-res versions.
Right. It's just, it optimizes.
Right.
So there's no such, if you have iCloud Photo Library, I don't know that there must be some limit, but if she doesn't have iCloud Photo Library, then she's doing it wrong. All right. I think I'm done.
Yep. 6:02.
Yeah, let
That's
me know,
not
Jill,
bad.
Yep. Considering we had that slow start with your problem with YouTube Live.
That wasn't me. That was YouTube.
Oh, that was your tiny tip question? You mean my dumb question? Let me think about it. Yeah, send me that separately, Jill. I'll think about whether that's a good one. It's just sort of, I'm just kind of snippy about it, though. It's like, get iCloud Photo Library. You're done. All right. I think we should call it, Steve.
I think we should.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night, Gracie.
Bye, Kevin. Oh, wait. Goodbye, Rose.
Is she still there?
I don't know.
All right. Good night, Rose.